program to actually do your field note logging in.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit distracted because apparently we don't have any audio coming through to the folks on the live stream.
Oh no.
So yeah, it's just the two of us talking into dead air and into the recorder, I guess.
Gotcha.
So we apologize for anyone who's tried to catch us live and having some issues. But let's move on maybe to the next one. How does that?
It took a whole lot more logs than up to 30, and it also brings and filters are basically just a way to narrow down anything. And the power of GSAK is great, so you can do a lot of narrowing down. But you can save your filters too. And so one of the ones that I have, I call it stale. And so I run that usually as soon as I do an import on one of my Pocket queries. And what the stale one does is it sets the dates field for the last GPX update that's not during the last 2 days, because I have my Pocket queries generate every day. And so if it's not been generated in the last 2 days, because archive caches don't show up in Pocket queries, if it's not been updated in the last 2 days, then it will set the filter in there, so I can see then if, cache ABC has not been updated in the last 2 days. I am pretty sure that it's probably been archived, or it may also have just fallen off the list because I keep, the reason I keep 1,000 caches in my database, local database, is because that's the maximum you can get in the Pocket query anyways. And so either it's been archived or it's been bumped out because a newer cache has come on the list. So it's not, I guess it wouldn't be the perfect way to do it, but that's one way to do it. The other thing you can do also is under the geocaching.com access menu, there is a status check button that you can do, and when you do that, you should be able to do current cache or all caches in the filter. And so what that will do is go through, and anything that you have or are showing, any caches that are showing, it'll go through and do a status update. So it'll check if it's been archived. It'll check, and it will change that. So then you can go ahead and it may take a little bit of time, but it will go through all of your caches in your database and change the appropriate heading. And by heading, I mean if it's been archived. Well, if it's disabled, it'll show up with a little like pinkish red under where the code is, a GC number. And then if it's been archived, it'll have a flash, like a little, it strikes through that line. So that's the way you can tell the difference. And so I think that would take care of that for you here, especially because it would be good. Instead of just refreshing the cache details, you're going to get just a status check. It goes a lot quicker. And so that'd be the one way you could do that to find out if you're doing it more than, if you've got a local database more than, say, 1,000 caches. Like for me, I can choose that filter, it's stale, and it kind of keeps anything that's not come in lately. Because if it's archived, then I get a different cache. So, but yeah, again, you could do the update status, the status check, and that would set those for you.
All right. Well, it looks like we have some audio in the live stream now, because we're actually getting a question here.
Okay.
Probably more a statement from Limax. Limax says he uses last update GPX date all the time to call out inactive caches.
Right, and that works as long as as long as you're only having about 1,000 caches in your database. Because if you have got more caches in there, like let's say you have a new cache that's published that's closer than one of the outer caches that's further away from you, it's going to drop that other one off and consider that stale because it won't update the cache because there's a newer one closer to you. So if you've got more than 1,000 caches in your database, that won't work because not all of them are going to come in. I guess they would come in if you did multiple Pocket queries too. I guess that would work because if you had multiple Pocket queries, as long as you're running them at once together on the same day, you could do that because then if they didn't come into your Pocket queries, then they would be older ones. So yeah, that would work.
Well, you could probably also do that just on the basis of knowing with certainty that all of your GPX files, all your Pocket queries have been updated by this date, and just go back and knock anything out that's older than that.
Yeah, that would work. And here's kind of how I use and why I find GSAK better than a lot of other programs. So I know that we've talked about. I know back in the day when we did the geocaching podcast together, we talked about lots of different geocaching apps and how a lot of people are going more for the smartphone now, and especially with things that have a live API in it. A lot of people, less people are using GSAK these days. Here's where I find myself using it. I find myself using it a lot when I'm doing trip planning. Like I still keep my local cache data in here a lot because it's easier for me to look at some of this data if I'm on a computer. I can get a bigger picture of the thing, and I just like doing it like that. But if I'm planning a trip, one of the things that I like is that you can add custom data in here too. And so, like for instance, I have a field in my cache grid that's just called P and G. And so what I'll do is I'll go, and you can get to and create those, but if you right-click on any of the caches and choose Edit, and then at the bottom there's a Custom button, and then you just, if you want to create one, you click on where it says Fields, and you can create, strings or booleans or dates and things like that. And so what I've done is I've created a boolean that does, just called park and grab. And so then what I can do is, if I go through and do any of the filters, like a lot of times, if I'm going to be in an area, I want to hit things that are pretty easy to hit if I'm traveling. And so I'll go through and I'll do a quick search, filter out things that say park and grab, PNG, things like that. And then I set via there's a way that you can, once you have a filter set, you can then go to database and replace all, global replace, and then that will set all of a certain property for the caches on or off or whatever. And so that I'll go through and filter on park and grab or PNG, and then turn those on, and so then I can look quickly to, and then later filter on, was it a park and grab, things like that, because it's helpful because you can get a little bit more data. It takes a little bit of time because you've got to do that, more manually because you have to search for certain cache string, things that are in the text or in the description. But it works out, well. And then you just got to be careful because sometimes people will put not a park and grab. So you got to kind of search for those too. So that's where I find that I've been using GSAK a lot is when I'm planning in trips and things like that because of the power of kind of getting a better picture. And then I really like the different macros too. And that's probably a whole other episode. But there's thousands and thousands of different macros, just kind of like an Excel macro that you can install. It will do lots of things. The different map ones are great because I can kind of sit down on my desktop, look at a bigger picture than I could if I was on my phone. And then what I do is I just export all of that data. Once I've got the caches down to the ones that I want, and I know that I'm going to try and hit on my cache strip, I can export the GPX out and then import it into something else, like my GPS, or if I'm going to be doing Geosphere or whatever. And so the nice thing too is once you export, if you have those custom fields in there, if you export a GPX, that custom data does come in the GPX. Now you'd have to have some sort of an application that would be able to handle that, but it does come in the GPX. I personally got a way that I can have Geosphere show it up when I loaded it, so I can see quickly if it's a park and grab. But that's a whole other that's all another episode too.
All right, and a little quick note from LimeX. He said that he runs between 2 and 4 pocket queries a day. Okay,
so yeah, it would work then definitely because you're as long as they're running and they're all imported in the same day or similar day, you could run one of those filters that say if it's not within the last 2 days or whatever, then you could, or a day, then you count it as like a stale cache, and then you can go further into that too. And once you have the caches, if you filter it, and it shows, let's say, 5 caches, that you could then run your status update on the geocaching.com API and have it actually update just to verify that those caches are indeed stale or not. If they're, and by stale I mean archived.
Chris, I see you nodding away your head over there. You have anything?
I'm listening. Hey, I made it.
Well, welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Xpunk X, it's good to hear your voice again.
It's good to be on the show.
One thing you mentioned when you said that you put a Boolean in for the park and grabs, do you add something to the geocache name when you export it so it shows up in your GPS as a park and grab?
Okay. So quickly, I'll try to get in that. This is going to be a little bit hard on the audio. When I export my GPXs, there's one of the things in the export field is something that's called extra information to show as first log. And so what I do in there is you can go ahead and put I've created a macro that basically goes through and runs through and exports all the user data 2, and anything else that I want. And part of that is if a park and grab. And so then the first log in my geosphere would be one specifically from GSAK, but it would have all of the information like user data 2, and park and grab. And so it would tell me if it's true or not. But you can just add I forget the specific on that, and I can let you guys know that here once I get a chance to look it up. But there's a specific thing that you could use pretty simply just to export the Boolean. It would export a 0 or 1, and so it would just be 0 or 1 as your first log. So you kind of have to know what that meant. But yeah, you could definitely do that, or you could change the name if you wanted to too. You might have to write a macro for that, but
nice. Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Well, one of the big questions we always get is, how do you get started? And I know that you've done a couple of tutorials. You have a GSAK 101 and 201. So probably before we go any further, let's put a plug in for those.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I did create a web video tutorial that's for sale on my site, laymancreations.com /GSAK 101 and 201. So laymancreations.com/GSAK 101 and 201. You'll link to that in the show notes. Correct. But yeah, it's a video tutorial that goes through and kind of gets the basics, and you can the nice thing about it is you can see what I'm talking about. But I think probably the quickest and easiest way to get started with GSAK, because there is a lot of data, or a lot of information, and you can do, and the more that you play with it, the more that you go, okay, hey, I want to do this. This is how I do it. And kind of try to figure out either by playing around or asking me or one of the people who kind of get into it. But I would say the best and quickest thing is to go in there and then just do geocaching.com access and download your pocket queries and play a little bit around with it. You'll see that you'll kind of get a look and see what the information you can see. And then, like I said, the main thing to remember is kind of how you're going to use it. Just kind of get in mind, okay, this is what I want to do with it. I've got the data. Again, the nice thing that I like is the filtering ability, because a lot of the Groundspeak app, the iPhone app and Android app, is okay, and there's it does some searches and things like that, but it's not great by any means. GeoSphere is decent. It has a decent amount of filtering data, but the data that you can filter with GSAK is just amazing. There's just like pretty much anything you can think you want to filter on, you can filter on and kind of get it down to a set of caches that you want to hunt for. I mean, that's the main thing that we want to do here, right? We want to find caches. So GSAK for me is just a tool that I can better decide which caches that I want to hit. And I use GSAK in ways like that you can't do with other things. Like the nice thing about GSAK is you've got places that you can keep notes. There's a field called user data and user data 2 that you can keep some notes on it. Say it's a puzzle cache that you want to do some work on. That's the nice thing about that, because you can keep that information in there. Or for me, sometimes I put if I have multiple pocket queries that I'm going to be on a trip for, I may be able to separate them out by days. What I think I want to hit on a certain day, and I can keep that information in the user data 2 or user data field, and then I can search on that, so I can filter down to just the caches that have that tag, if you will, to them. So again, I guess that's the best way is to kind of just get in there, play around with it. Maybe watch the tutorials that I've got. Ask some people. Ask lots of other people in the forums. the GSAK forums are pretty good. People will answer your questions there.
All right. So basically, we just point people to some other people like the forums.
Right, and I mean, once you get in there and kind of play around with it, you got. I mean, I guess the thing is, GSAK it's an advanced tool. But obviously you got to start somewhere, right? But so if you're just going to be looking to put your caches in there and then export them to your GPX or your phone or your GPS or whatever you're using, it will do that, and it will do it. It'll do it good. But the other power behind it, is things that you can filter and you log. I mean, one of the things that I like about it too is the fact that when you do the log, you can do templates, and a lot of the templates that you can do information in. And so, for instance, just basically, if you're creating a template, you can go in and select things like run total, run count, date, time, any notes that you have in the field notes, owner, cache name, things like that. So you can make your templates a little bit more information in the templates. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I've done some pretty advanced things with it. I've put the weather in my template sometimes. I've done some previous caches. Created some macros that do some pretty advanced stuff in there that you can do. Like I said, weather or the next cache that we found, the last cache, the time between caches, things like that. Those are a little more advanced, and I'm more than willing to help you. If anyone wants those information, they can get in touch with me via the Groundspeak website, and I'd be more than happy to send most of those out. The weather one's a little bit different because you have to get a API key for weather.com or weather underground. But the other ones, the previous next, things like that, I'm willing to help if someone wants to check those out, and they can just contact me.
So, XPunkDuct, I think you really hit upon it here. The entry point into GSAK is caches in, caches out. The idea of you take your pocket queries, dump them in there, and be able to export them to multiple devices, be that a GPS, be that Geosphere for the smartphone, whatever. And then after that is really where you can start playing with it and determining, hey, I want to be able to look for this specific set of caches and start to learn the different filters available.
Right, and I mean I think that the entry point to GSAK used to be the fact that people would manage the waypoints because they couldn't, they could only have 1,000 caches or 500 caches in their GPS. But now that those numbers are a little less, people may not see the need for GSAK, but again, the advanced searching and the way that the things that you can do with it, and so much more, and change and manipulate the data like that. Like when I'm exporting things, I can export and changing the data that I want. It's a pretty advanced tool.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's exactly how people used to get into GSAK, and why so many of the old school cachers are such fans of GSAK is because they got into it back when they had to use it to load their GPS. Now that you don't need it anymore, people aren't getting in and getting as friendly with GSAK as they had before. So it is much more difficult to get in and learn. Is getting that you don't have a reason to get in and play with it every day like you used to. So you don't have the ability to build the proficiency as quickly as you used to.
Right. One of the things. Let's just take an example here. This would be kind of a basic example too. Daryl, I know that you and I both like puzzle caches and things like that. We've talked extensively how we use Evernote for keeping the notes. You can do the same thing in GSAK too. There's a note field that you can keep if you are looking at the cache grid. It looks like a little paper. It has an A and some lines. If you double click on the empty space in there, you have a notes section that comes up and it says user notes or log section. Under the user notes, you can keep whatever you want to keep in there, and then it will show up kind of in the listing, like when you're looking at the cache in your database. You can see all of that information in there, so you can see what you've done, what you've tried, which is great for not only solving the things, but then basically if you want to go back and let's say you found a cache, even if it's not a puzzle cache, you want to go back and you want to see someone asks you, hey, where was this cache at? I can't find it. You can if you keep notes on your caches, you can look back in your database and say, hey, that cache was right by the fence post. It was a bison tube, and it was a wall camo, things like that, and then give them easy data. But I know for you and me, it's hard to remember a cache that you've done more than a year ago, even the ones a month ago if you've done a lot of them. And so if people are asking me about a cache, I have to go back and look it up. And so if I had notes, it'd be a whole lot easier to say, yeah, it's here, it's here, it's here.
Yeah.
Xpunk X, you must be younger than me because I can't remember the caches I did last week. And I only did 3.
Well, Limax in the live area is saying that he's been a GSAK user for close to 10 years, and he's still a beginner.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, I think that, for me, I like programming and I like tinkering, and so I really get into it and I get into the nuts and bolts, and, I love being able to, for me, it's a challenge to go, okay, I want this data. Again, for instance, the weather data. Do I need it? No. But I was like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to be able to put the weather data in my log for that day. And so I found a way to do it. And I went behind the scenes. I asked people in the forums. I checked it out, things like that. So yeah, there's so much that you can do with it. Pretty much, if you want to do it with a cache listing or cache, you can do it. You can keep the data in there. You can manipulate it. If there's a way to do it, whether that's the nice thing about it. It's extensible with that macros, and you don't have to know programming languages to take advantage of the macros. So many people have written macros out there, and even then, even if you can't find a macro, and they're listed on the GSAK website. I'm getting all excited here, so I'm talking fast. Yeah, you're talking my language, but even if there's not, you can say, hey, I want to do this. Someone can either point you in the right direction, or they maybe willing to, write something for you. So I agree with Limax. I've been a user for, probably 10 years also, and I'm still a beginner myself, even though I consider myself a fairly advanced beginner, but I know that there are people that know way more than I do about it, too. So, if you look in the forums, there are people that just go crazy with the things that you can do. They're willing to help, too. That's the great thing about these forums. They're willing to help.
Yeah, that's one thing that really helps is having those great forums. And we do have one last question I think we're going to take from the live Q&A before we move on. Max, and he wanted to know if you use multiple databases in GSAK.
I do. I've got here. I'll list out the ones that I have for you right now. Excuse me. I've got one called Caches I Own, and those are ones that I've placed. I keep those separate. It's just called default because it was the default name, and I never changed it. But it's my local area. 1,000 caches to my local area. I live in Daryl, I live out in the middle of a cornfield, but I live in an area that's semi-populated. I wouldn't call it Chicago or something like that, but it's got a decent area that has bigger cities around it. Not like cities like Chicago, but bigger, small cities around it. And so I find that with 1,000 caches radius, I don't travel a whole lot, so I'm not going to need more than that. So that default one is mine here. I've got one for when I'm down by my parents' house. I create and kind of keep up caches around there. I have my found caches database that allows me to see the ones that I found. I've got a puzzles caches that I'm just working on and different things like that, even if they're not around me. One that's called random caches, things that I like that I just kind of put in there. A temp one, if I'm trying to mess with some data and I don't want to do it in my main database, I do it in the temp area. So those are the ones that I use and kind of how I use them.
All right. I want one more live Q&A response because this is, I think, going to be a really good one for a lot of people. Andrew said, along the lines of your custom fields, he added a field called order if he's planning a park and grab run,
Mm-hmm.
He says he labels them 1, 2, 3, etc., and then can sort by that field. I print the grid, and then I have an itinerary for the caches I want to hit.
That's a great idea. There's also one in there called user sort, and you may need it's already built in, and you may need to go in and find it under the view and change your view. Go ahead and show that one, and then what you can do under where is it at? I'm trying to find it now. There's a place where you can set what that starts at. I believe it's yes. Under the General tab of options. It says user sort. It says current value and increment by 1. And so the nice thing about that is every time you click on one, it creates a new number. And so I don't need to create a custom field for it and then actually go through and physically number it. But if I double click on the user sort one, it just automatically adds the next number in the field. So that might be a better way for them to look at that, because you can do it a little bit more automatically instead of having to type the number in and remember what you had done. I'm not as old as Chris, but my memory is so bad I can't. Sometimes if I get distracted, it's hard for me to remember. Oh yeah, the last number I did was 50 or 100. Like it may take me a little bit to remember. So for me, if I use the user sort and I just click on it, it will increment by 1, and then you can go ahead and sort that out and do things with that.
I love you too, XPunkX.
Hey, we're close. We'll just call close. Your kids are a little bit older than mine, but it's all good.
You'll catch up one day. No, wait, you can't.
Right, I will, and then you'll be laughing at me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're running a little long here, so we'll say thanks a lot for that. But we do have some more stuff going on here. So thanks, XPunkX, for joining us again. We'd love to have you on again sometime.
Sure.
And, of course, check out his website, which we'll link to in the show notes for his GSAK tutorials. Now, before we move on to this feedback, though, Chris, we got to warn people to keep an eye on the Cache Maniacs, or the GeoGearHeads feed a little later this week, because we should have a little bit of a preview through a special edition coming up that we just recorded today with the folks over at the Lily Pad.
Daryl, that was a very nice session we did today. We got a lot of good information. We do have to keep it on wraps until geocaching.com lets us know that these features that we talked about are ready to roll out. So I just want to keep you guys on the edge. You got to watch the feed when that comes out. You're going to want to jump on, and especially if you're a premium member, there's a little plug for geocaching.com at no extra charge. You need to be a premium member to see the new features before they're released to the public.
Well, and here's our safety tip that we also need to make sure to warn people, that they go and check their settings, because apparently you have to have the promotional email flag set in order to get the invite for the new feature. So make sure that you do that. Make sure you watch our feed. And the problem with part of this is a beta version that they're not sure is going to be released. So some of the stuff that they talked about today might not actually be in there. So you never know. Or they might add more stuff too.
Exactly.
But, I'm hoping that it is very much like what we saw, because that was pretty cool.
That was cool. Well, we have feedback. And we have feedback from a person I'd like to call a friend. Brylang wrote via email, on the subject of waypointing your car. Out here in the Pacific Northwest, our terrain is often quite steep and or involves water features. And sometimes that's just not the puddles on the ground. Taking a direct route back to your car may require a significant elevation loss down a ravine and back up the other side. So it's usually faster to take the trail. If you have a good idea of the terrain between you and your car, if you want to take the direct route, or I'm sorry, you have to have a good idea of the terrain between you and your car if you want to take the direct route. Also, in snowy conditions, if there's a stream between you and your car, you certainly don't want to post hole through the snow into the stream you can't see underneath.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a very pleasant situation.
No, getting your boots full of water is no fun.
Yeah, I've certainly done similar things myself, but the water feature thing, does the Pacific Ocean qualify as a water feature?
Yes. Yeah, especially here in my area where we have the Puget Sound, which is an extension of the Pacific Ocean. However, it's isolated, so it becomes more of a water feature.
Ah, got it. Okay. Now I understand this thing. All right, well, we've got a question for you again, and if you get the right answer, your name will be dropped in the pool for a chance to win another one of those gift certificates from GeoFleas. And remember, too, that the discount code GF01FS for free shipping on your order from GeoFleas expires at the end of January, and you have a chance, this gift certificate, you have to have your question 161 email to us by January 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. In the body, include your geocaching.com screen name and tell us which mega event is using the tagline, Unearth the Pharaoh's Treasure. As always, our email address is geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, so make sure to have that question 161 email to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com by 9 p.m. Eastern on January 29th for your chance at the gift certificate from GeoFleas. And make sure to listen next week for the right answer and whom was drawn as the winner.
Daryl, they use the term unearth. This can't be an official geocache because you can't bury it. Unearth the Pharaoh's treasure.
So I assume that it's in the basement.
Oh, interesting. Maybe it's more like a Hawaiian pig roast. Anyway, be that as it may, you may want to set dinner aside for some of these upcoming shows. Be that a Hawaiian pig roast or something you pull out of the microwave. Next week, January 29th, we're talking MOGA 2015. We have a couple of the organizers who are going to be on the show with us. February 5th is our Randomized 31 episode. You know, Daryl, we're going to catch up to the Super Bowl in numbers here of our randomized episodes. Now, we have a friend coming for that randomized episode, and he's one of the favorite guests on GeoGearhead. That's Mark of the O-Beep podcast and DeBear. And those two together shouldn't be on any radio together. So anyway, you're going to want to listen live to this episode because there's going to be extra prize drawings. February 12th, we're doing Ciphers 1 with the author of the Cliff Knowles series of books. February 19th, we're doing Puzzle Q&A. So send your questions in for Jennifer, but no spoilers. February 26th, we're talking about bicycle maintenance with Dano of Team Pugach. And guess what? He's sponsoring a live prize for that show too. So here you go. In the next 5 weeks, there are 2 chances for you to win prizes live on the show. You're going to want to tune in.
Check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Offenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2015 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Yes, we're the Cachemaniacs.